So I'm Aaron. I did my master's in McGill University in Montreal, and I will start a PhD in London, University of London this fall, and I just spent the last year as a visiting researcher in Barcelona at ICTA. And so here's a picture of this place called the NDG Food Depot in Montreal. And they basically take industrial food waste and redistribute it. They're a food bank. But then also what's interesting is they also do collective kitchen events, they do workshops on food literacy and urban gardening. But then this thing happened in spring 2013 where they actually were kicked out of the space that they had been in for 20 years, this space, and had to move into the church basement because a big hospital was moving in nearby and real estate developers said, oh, this looks like a really nice warehouse to develop. And so this interested me because on the one hand, you have all these different things going on. You have industrial food waste, you have a community food organization, and you have gentrification or urban development projects. And this kind of expands into these wider issues that we're facing today, like the centralization of the food industry, at the same time increasing volatility of the food system, and at the same time increase in speculation in cities and development in cities. So these are kind of the issues that I'm interested in. So for my master's, I looked at the history of food banks in Canada and looked at them from an ecological economics and institutional economics perspective. And I kind of argued that food banks can be seen as a cost-shifting success, as Eric explained what that is earlier, of the food industry. And then for my PhD, I intend to look at how food can how food access changes when neighborhoods are affected by gentrification or urban development projects. And very specifically, I want to look at that through an ecosystem service perspective. Yeah.
Okay, questions for Aaron? Let's have one or two looking around.
Very interesting. Love food waste topic. Just curious, is it like big in Canada, like meaning like are there policies, regulations, like as was implemented in France, recently, like a kind of throwaway food, that there must be some kind of infrastructure to get rid of the food waste in a good way?
So there's no formal government policies around food waste in Canada, which was why actually I thought that Canada was a very interesting case study, because unlike the United States, the UK, Europe, there are no formal governmental policies. So I said there was actually a policy gap there. And yeah, it's a huge system still. So it's 900,000 people use it per month or get food from food waste.
I'd like to challenge that choice. Wouldn't it be more interesting to look at the forerunners and see how the regulations have been implemented? Because otherwise you could say, well, when Canada will catch up, they will learn from the other countries. Wouldn't it be more interesting to look at the countries that have already implemented the regulations?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of research that already has, I mean, it's a really broad question because a lot of people have argued, looking at the food bank system, that food banks are starting to replace welfare services.
Mm-hmm.
And so people looked at, for example, the US, which was the first country to have food banks, and argued that that was the case, that food banks started appearing because an increase in government policies around this issue of food waste. But actually, in Canada, why I selected Canada is because or why I think it's interesting, it's an anomaly where there are no government policies and still the food bank system increased at the same rate.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Thank you very much, Aaron.